There is a fact about human reproduction so obvious that we take it for granted today. A child is born 9 months after conception. Simple, logical. A 10-year-old knows this. But for most of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, nobody knew this. Let that land for a second. The 9-month gap between cause and effect is so long that without modern knowledge, without calendars, without science, it was almost impossible to connect them. Think about it from your ancestors' perspective. You do something today. 9 months later, completely unrelated in your mind, a baby appears. There is no pregnancy test. There is no doctor. There is no Wikipedia. There is just a woman, a growing belly, and absolutely no explanation that makes any logical sense. So what did they think was happening? Magic, spirits, a gift from the gods. Some tribes believed that swimming in a certain river caused pregnancy. Others believed that eating a specific fruit was responsible. Some believed that a woman simply became pregnant when the time was right, the same way fruit ripens on a tree. Nobody thought to look at the man standing next to her, and that single gap in human understanding, that one invisible link, shaped almost everything about how we live today. Marriage, family, jealousy, loyalty, inheritance, war, peace. All of it traces back to the moment our ancestors finally figured out what was actually going on. To understand how that discovery happened, we have to go back to the campfire. The earliest solid evidence of humans controlling fire comes from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. Roughly 1 million years ago, fire did not just keep people warm. Fire completely restructured the human day. Before fire, our ancestors were like every other primate. When the sun went down, you found a safe spot, and you stayed completely still. Moving at night meant becoming food. Leopards, hyenas, and wolves could see perfectly in the dark. We could not. We were basically walking snacks with no night vision. Fire changed that equation overnight. Literally, a campfire creates a circle of safety roughly 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, predators will not come. Outside that circle, well, let's just say you would not be anyone's ancestor for very long. But here is what fire actually gave us that mattered most. Extra hours. Before fire, the useful day ended at sunset. Maybe 12 hours in summer, as few as 8 in winter. Fire suddenly added 2 to 4 usable hours to every single night. And in 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a landmark study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She spent years recording conversations among the Juanzi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living close to the original human way of life. During the day, roughly 80% of conversations were practical. Who is hunting where? Which plants are ready? Logistics, work. But at night, around the fire, everything changed. At night, 81% of conversations were stories, distant people, adventures, myths, the patterns of the natural world, and above all, observations about life itself. Wiesner argued that firelight is where human culture was born. It is also, most likely, where the first great mystery of human life began to be slowly, quietly, finally solved. Night after night, generation after generation, sitting in that circle of light, our ancestors started noticing patterns in a woman's body, patterns in timing, patterns that no single human mind could have figured out alone, but that a tribe, talking around a fire for thousands of years, eventually could. But the campfire was not the only place where this thinking happened. There was another window, a quieter one, and most people alive today have never experienced it. Historian Roger E. Kirch spent 16 years researching how humans slept before the Industrial Age. In 2001, he published his findings, drawn from over 500 historical sources spanning centuries, prayer books, court records, medical texts, diaries written by ordinary people across multiple continents. All of them describe the same thing. Before artificial light changed everything, humans did not sleep in one continuous block the way we do today. They slept for roughly 4 hours, then woke up naturally for 1 to 2 hours in the middle of the night, then slept again until dawn. This was not insomnia. This was not a disorder. This was just how humans slept for hundreds of thousands of years, every single night. This wakeful period in the middle of the night was called the watch. Now, here is where it gets interesting. In 1992, psychiatrist Thomas Weir at the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment. He took volunteers and removed all artificial light from their lives for a month, 14 hours of darkness every night, the same as our ancestors would have experienced. Within weeks, every single participant settled into the same pattern on their own. 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 2 hours awake. 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody told them to do this. Their bodies simply remembered. And when Ver measured their hormone levels during that wakeful window, he found something remarkable. The brain was producing elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone associated with deep meditation. Participants described the state as peaceful, reflective, completely unlike normal waking. It was its own distinct state of consciousness. A 16th century doctor's manual actually recommended this window, the watch, as the best time to study, to think, and to reflect. The mind was calm, the world was silent, and the thoughts that came in that darkness were clearer than any that came during the busy noise of the day. Now imagine lying in that silence, that meditative state, that complete stillness, with nothing to distract you and nothing to do except think. What would you think about? What your ancestors thought about night after night was the same thing humans have always thought about in the quiet, each other, and the patterns of life that connected them. And then, at some point, someone made the connection. No one can say exactly when. No one can say who. There was no announcement, no ceremony, no headline. Just a slow, accumulating understanding that spread across generations like a fire spreading from one campsite to the next. A specific act, a specific man. 9 months later, a specific child. For the first time in human history, paternity was not a mystery. It was a fact. And that single realization, that quiet, world-changing moment of understanding, hit human society like nothing before it, and very little after it. Anthropologist Robin Fox, whose work on kinship and marriage became one of the most studied foundations in the history of anthropology, argued that the question of paternity sits at the root of almost every human social structure ever built. And you can see why immediately. Before this discovery, a man provided for the tribe. He hunted, he protected, he fought. His effort went into a shared pot, and children were raised communally. Nobody owned anybody. Nobody owed anybody anything specific. After this discovery, everything became personal. A man who spent years of his life hunting through winters, fighting off predators, carrying heavy things a very long way, suddenly understood that he was either protecting his own genetic legacy or he was not. That is not a small distinction. That is the kind of distinction that rewires an entire society overnight. Suddenly, paternity was the most valuable piece of information in the tribe, more valuable than the best hunting ground, more valuable than any tool or weapon, because without it, nothing else a man built, protected, or passed down meant anything at all. And the women understood the other side of this just as clearly. A mother raising a child alone in the Pleistocene was a mother in serious danger. She needed a committed partner. She needed someone who would stay, someone who would bring food when she could not hunt, someone who would fight when she could not defend. The discovery of paternity gave both of them something they had never had before: leverage. And so the solution emerged, not from poetry, not from moonlight and flowers, from cold, hard necessity. If a man and a woman made a public, witnessed commitment to each other, what anthropologists call a social contract, then paternity was no longer uncertain. It was an agreement, a guarantee backed by the entire community. Robin Fox documented how marriage, across virtually every human culture ever studied, functions as exactly this kind of alliance. It was never primarily about love. It was about resources, protection, certainty, survival. 2 families, 2 tribes, resources exchanged, children accounted for, everyone clear on who owes what to whom, and the practice of exogamy, marrying someone from outside your own group, made the contract even more powerful. A rival tribe became family overnight. A potential enemy became someone whose grandchildren you were raising alongside your own. Think about the genius of this for a moment. You cannot attack a tribe when your daughter is living in their camp and your grandchildren are sleeping around their fire. Marriage did not just bond 2 people, it made war significantly more complicated, which, for most of human history, was exactly the point. Marriage was the first peace treaty in human history, and the feelings that came with it, the loyalty, the jealousy, the rage of betrayal, the fear of abandonment, these were not accidents of emotion. They were the enforcement mechanism. They were how the contract held when nothing else would. A written law means nothing if there is no court to enforce it, but a feeling that lives in your chest, that rises like fire when you sense a threat to the bond, that enforces itself every time, automatically, without anyone having to remind you. That is what evolution built, not love poems. Enforcement. Now here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. None of that is gone. Evolutionary psychologists describe our modern emotional responses to relationships as biological memories. Responses shaped not by our conscious choices, but by hundreds of thousands of years of selection pressure so intense that it rewrote the architecture of the human nervous system. The anxiety that rises when a partner grows distant, the anger that ignites when a loyalty is broken, the deep, almost irrational need to know that a commitment is real. These are not character flaws. They are not things you need to fix in therapy. They are ancient software, running exactly as it was designed to run. For your ancestors, a broken bond did not mean a difficult few months and some sad music. It meant potential exile from the group. And in the Pleistocene, exile from the group meant death. The emotions that feel so overwhelming and so disproportionate today were once perfectly proportionate. They were life and death signals, and your nervous system still treats them that way, even when your rational mind knows better, even when you can see clearly that you are safe, even when you understand exactly what is happening and why. The signal fires anyway, because evolution does not update quickly. 300,000 years of pressure does not unwind in a few generations of modern comfort. We still carry the weight of that first discovery, made around a fire, in the silence between sleeps, when someone finally looked at a child and understood something that would change the entire structure of human life. We did not just invent marriage, we evolved for it. And every time you feel that pull toward commitment, that fear of loss, that need to belong to someone and have them truly belong to you, that is not weakness. That is not neediness. That is 300,000 years of survival memory, still working, still protecting you from a danger that no longer exists. But the body does not know that yet. Here is a question I want you to sit with tonight. Before our ancestors made this discovery, before paternity was understood, life was simpler in one very specific way. Pregnancy was a gift from the spirits. Children belonged to the whole tribe. No one owned anyone. No one was accountable to anyone in that specific, personal, high-stakes way that marriage created. Then the discovery changed everything. It gave us structure. It gave us families. It gave us the foundation that eventually became civilization. But did it also give us something darker? Jealousy, ownership, the idea that another person can belong to you, and that if they stop belonging to you, something has been stolen. Do you think our society was more peaceful when we believed life was a gift from the spirits, rather than a biological contract that had to be guarded, enforced, and protected? Or do you think the contract, for all the pain it created, was worth it? Drop your answer in the comments. There is no correct answer here, which is exactly why I want to read yours.